Given the rise in popularity of gaming on Android, we've seen manufacturers try and capitalize on it with gaming-focused smartphones. Now, these have typically been all about battery life, refresh rate, sustained performance, and sometimes, just sometimes, manufacturers also cater to people looking for physical controls. So let's say you're one of those people. You like the actual feel of pressing a physical key more than its virtual brethren. Maybe because you like to play old school games or just modern ones with controller support. Or maybe you want to use remapping software to get to play games like PUBG and Genshin Impact, the ones that don't actually have built-in controller support. If this is you, then you basically get two choices. One, buy something like a ROG phone with a Kunai gamepad add-on that can get very expensive very quick. Alternatively, you can go for the cheap Android phone plus controller route and beat it up if you want to find out what controller would work best for you. I have a dedicated video on that. Here's a card to it. Check it out if you're interested. Now, what if you wanted Android gaming and the battery life for it with physical controls and a solid remapping software, all while keeping the pricing relatively affordable? Now, this is the niche that GPD is catering to with the XP. That same intro pretty much holds true for this video too, because the XP Plus that Gamepad Digital recently launched is an identical device cosmetically, but it comes with some much needed changes under the hood. Hey guys, Ash here from C4 eTech, and if you do end up liking what you see, thumbs up, subscribe, turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Let's get started. Guys, when we generally see a mid-cycle refresh with the same form factor, we immediately think of minor incremental changes, because phone manufacturers have kind of made us to expect that. To take a recent example, the Asus ROG Phone 5S, here they swapped the 888 with the 888 Plus and increased touch response from 300Hz to 360. That's it. Given it was sold for the same price, it wasn't an issue for the end consumer since you were getting a little bit extra and not paying anything more, but it wasn't a very noteworthy upgrade. In the past few years, we've seen similar mid-cycle refreshes from other brands like OnePlus 2. While the GPD XP to XP Plus might seem to be one of those at first glance, it isn't. There are big changes under the hood here. GPD has actually gone multiple classes higher. While the Helio G95 on the XP was a very respectable SoC, the XP Plus is at a whole different level with the Dimensity 1200, MediaTek's flagship chip for 2021. Typically, with handhelds, it's a niche, right? And one that not a lot of people even know exists. So brands get away with using cheap bottom-of-the-barrel chipsets from the likes of Allwinner and Rockchip. The Helio G95 was comparatively better, but still paled in comparison to what you could expect on a phone at a similar price point. If you were asking yourself the question, won't a phone and a Razer Kishi actually be cheaper? The answer was almost always yes. You could still buy the XP. It wasn't a bad device. The controllers, the integration, the ergonomics, the battery, there were reasons to buy it, but it wasn't outperforming any phones at the same segment it was priced at. But this time around with the Dimensity 1200, it puts the XP Plus at the same level as phones in its segment, meaning for a lot of potential buyers, it is an actual better deal than getting a phone and a Kishi. For example, the Nord 2, which also happens to have the same Dimensity 1200, it retails for about $400. The GPD XP Plus offers the same chip for $338. Well, at least on Indiegogo, because the retail price does shoot up a lot and negates almost everything I say in this video. Now, notice how I said it offers the same chip and not offers the same performance. That's because the XP Plus has active cooling. This means it can sustain peak performance for a lot longer. Now think about this for a minute. What happens when you game? The chip inside, it's being pushed, right? So what happens when a chip gets pushed? It generates heat. Now, what happens when heat gets generated? The pushing of the chip, the performance, it gets throttled so as to keep the temps under check, to keep the device from overheating. The active cooling on the XP Plus, it negates that. In theory at least. To test this practically, I took a compound benchmark, one that pushes both the CPU as well as the GPU, and Antutu in this case, and ran it back to back on both the XP Plus and the Nord 2, which, in case you've forgotten, both of them are powered by the same Dimensity 1200 SoC. With the first run, the Nord 2 scores higher. Note that the Nord 2 does have more RAM. Those are the variants I have. Now, just 10 minutes later, with the second run, you see a drastic drop on the Nord 2. It's lost 13% of its performance. In the same period, the XP Plus has dropped just 2%. In the next 10 minutes, the Nord 2 is down by 18%. The XP Plus actually gains a little lost ground, and at this point is just 0.6% lower than what it scored in its first run. And this trend, it keeps continuing as long as you keep pushing both chips. Now, this isn't a knock on OnePlus or the Nord 2, it's just how phones and tablets actually behave given the lack of active cooling. After 5 rounds, you see how the line is almost straight for the XP Plus? And that's exactly what you want to see on a device meant for gaming. Another change that GPD have brought to the table is with the RAM and storage speeds. The RAM's up to 40 to 66 MHz and the storage is now UFS 3.1, so everything should be a little faster. The XP Plus gets support for Wi-Fi 6 and the analog sticks have also been updated to utilize Hall sensor tech, so stick drift shouldn't be an issue. The rest of the device is pretty much the same GPD XP that you either loved or hated. So let me quickly cut to another clip from my XP video, the parts where I talk about everything else that's totally remained unchanged here. The display you see here, it's 6.81 inches, but it's a 20:9 display. It's got a hole punch camera that might not be the best choice on a gaming centric device, but that wasn't what bothered me. The aspect ratio, it's just not for me. My main use case for the XP is streaming or sometimes retro gaming, in which case, we are looking at 4:3 outputs, so about 40% of this panel is getting wasted, or 16:9 for say the PSP or game streaming, in which case we still lose a good 20% of screen real estate. One of the advantages a device like this brings to the table compared to a phone plus controller combo is ergonomics. Now, at first I hated these bumps. Felt like they shouldn't have been there, but as I use the XP more and more, I think I forgot to mention this, I've been using it for about 3 weeks now. The more I've used it, the more I've grown to love the ergonomics. So barring the fact that I wish this was 16:9, and it also, it wouldn't have hurt if they'd used the Win3's analog L2, R2 instead of the digital ones here. But barring these, I really loved my time with the XP. Now, don't get me wrong, the display itself, it's not bad or anything. It's a standard Gorilla Glass 5 covered Full HD plus IPS panel. GPD gives you options to manually switch it to 18:9, 16:9, or even down to 720p if you want to get a little bit more performance. It doesn't get particularly bright or dim, but for most indoor use cases, it is perfectly fine. Again, I just wish it was 16:9. Now, one of the XP's major positives has got to be the software. Games read this controller as an Xbox controller, so X input. When a controller is not supported, then this button here lights up. Tap on it and you get to drag every key at your disposal to trigger on-screen actions. Pretty simple and it works great. I did play a few games of PUBG and it was fine. It's not my cup of tea, but it is, if it's something that's gonna interest you, then it works great. Now, there are a couple of things I forgot to mention earlier. The Type-C port that you see, it now offers video out, and it also supports faster charging, 30 watts up from 20 on the XP. The last change is that the XP Plus now supports voice calls out of the box. And no, that doesn't mean you're gonna get a earpiece. You're not gonna have to, hold it up and do this. But if you wanna make calls via earphones, you can. And yes, there's a headphone jack, and you can even add 2 SIM cards or use a SIM and micro SD if you choose to. You still get that alternate module. This gives you 5 keys to the front with a bumper and a lower trigger key. So 7 in all. The key mapping software detects it automatically and changes accordingly. It's easy to map, and if you're into mobile gaming, it might be something that interests you. And anyways, if you want to play games without a module to the right, you can do that. This module cover is also available in box. Now, with all that said and done, it's time we talk pricing. And here, let me make it clear. If you're buying this, you need to buy it on Indiegogo. The pricing there, $338, that makes sense. The retail price, it's expected to be a lot higher. If that's the only option you have at the point you're watching this video, I'd say wait for a deal, wait for him to drop the price, because at over, say, $400, the XP Plus, as much as I like it, it's not worth buying. Anyways, taking the price as $338, which is what it is today, the only real competition to the XP Plus is the i-Odin. It's a lot cheaper, coming in at just $240, but then again, it has a flagship chip from 4 years back compared to a flagship chip from 1 year back on the XP Plus. So does that mean it's an easy choice? You just pick the XP Plus? Not really. If you're someone looking to choose between these two, then here's my take on it. Ask yourself, what is it that you're trying to do? If you want to play games from systems older than the GameCube, then the Odin is hands down the better choice. Yes, it's an older chip, but some emulators are optimized better for Qualcomm chipsets, so most consoles up to GameCube are gonna run similarly across both the XP Plus and the Odin. Also, the 16:9 aspect ratio on it would mean you lose lesser screen real estate to letterboxing. And the fact that the sticks are a little recessed will give you a better experience with systems where you don't really need to use that second stick. The right analog stick on the XP Plus, it's actually a pain. It's frustrating with some games when you don't need it. There have been times where I would just remove the cap. Yes, you can do that, and that would make the experience a whole lot better. That said, if you're looking at GameCube and above, and especially if you're looking at streaming games, the XP Plus should be a choice. I say this because I do fall under that category. I play some PS2 games from time to time, with emulation, and spend a lot of time streaming from my PC or consoles. Initially, I thought the 20:9 aspect ratio might not be optimal for this, and I still stick to it. It's not optimal, but the sticks on these are a whole lot more accurate than what's on the Odin, and they feel better to use. And also the extra horsepower for more complex systems, that's always welcome. So that's my take on the XP Plus. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, we are at the end of this video. Thumbs up, thumbs down based on whatever you felt about it. Subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that bell icon if you haven't yet. And thanks a lot for watching. Till next time, my name's Ash. You've been watching C4E Tech. And I'm signing off for now. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.